The gym door slammed shut, the metallic clang echoing like a gunshot in the empty locker room. Carter's heart lurched as he spun around, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Coach Ethan, his chiseled jaw set and hazel eyes unreadable, turned the lock with a deliberate click that made Carter's breath catch. It was late, past 9 p.m., and the gym in downtown Seattle was a ghost town. Carter, 24 and still finding his footing in this sprawling city, had stayed for an extra session, pushing his limits on the weights under Ethan's watchful eye. He'd moved here 6 months ago, chasing a graphic design job and a fresh start after a messy breakup back in Chicago. The gym, Peak Pulse Fitness, had become his sanctuary, a place to drown out the noise of his past. Ethan, the head coach, was the kind of guy who commanded attention. 27, blonde, built like a Greek statue, with a smile that could melt steel. Carter had noticed him from day one, but he'd buried those thoughts deep. Ethan was his coach, his mentor, nothing more. Or so he'd told himself. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his voice low, almost a growl, as he stepped closer. Carter's pulse raced, his gym bag slipping from his shoulder to the bench. The air felt thick, charged with something Carter couldn't name. "What's this about?" he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the lockers, arms crossed, studying Carter like he was a puzzle to solve. "You've been different lately," Ethan said finally. "Distracted, pushing too hard, then pulling back. What's going on with you, Carter?" The question wasn't accusatory, but it hit like one. Carter swallowed, his mind flashing to the late-night texts he'd ignored from his ex, the creeping loneliness that clung to him despite the new city, the new job, the new life. And, if he was honest, the way his eyes lingered on Ethan during their sessions, on the way his coach's hands adjusted his form, the way his laugh filled the room. "I'm fine," Carter lied, shoving his water bottle into his bag. "Just adjusting." Ethan raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. He stepped closer, close enough that Carter could smell the faint cedar of his cologne mixed with the clean sweat of their workout. "Don't bullshit me," Ethan said, softer now, but with an edge that made Carter's skin prickle. "I see you, Carter. I see how you carry it all." The words landed like a punch. Carter's defenses, the walls he'd built to keep everyone out, cracked just a fraction. He didn't know why Ethan cared, or why it mattered so much that he did. But standing there, under the fluorescent lights, with Ethan's gaze pinning him in place, Carter felt exposed, raw, like every secret he'd buried was written on his face. "I don't know what you want me to say," Carter said, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned to grab his jacket, needing to move, to escape the intensity of the moment. But Ethan's hand caught his wrist, gentle but firm, stopping him cold. The touch sent a jolt through Carter's body, electric and terrifying. He froze, his eyes meeting Ethan's, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "I want you to be real with me," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Because I'm about to be real with you." Carter's heart thundered. He didn't know what was coming, but the locked door, the empty gym, the way Ethan's thumb brushed lightly against his wrist, it all screamed that his life was about to change. Ethan let go, but he didn't step back. Instead, he ran a hand through his blonde hair, exhaling like he was steadying himself for a leap. "I've been watching you, Carter. Not just as your coach, as more." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Carter's mind reeled. Was this a confession? A trap? His ex's voice echoed in his head, the cruel taunts about how no one would ever want him. Not really. But Ethan's eyes were steady, unguarded, and Carter saw something there he hadn't dared to hope for: vulnerability. "I don't know how to do this," Ethan continued, his voice raw. "I've never crossed this line before. But you're in my head, Carter. Every damn day." Carter's breath hitched. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but his throat was tight, his thoughts a chaotic swirl. Ethan, the man who seemed untouchable, was standing here, bearing his soul. And Carter, who'd spent months convincing himself he didn't deserve this, felt the ground shift beneath him. Before he could respond, a sharp knock on the gym door shattered the moment. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound, his body tensing. "Shit," he muttered, glancing at Carter with a mix of frustration and something like fear. "Stay here," he said, moving to unlock the door. Carter's mind raced as Ethan opened it, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man in a suit, his face shadowed but unmistakably serious. "Ethan," the man said, his voice clipped. "We need to talk. Now." Carter's stomach dropped. Whoever this guy was, he wasn't here for a casual chat. Ethan's jaw tightened, and he shot Carter a look that said stay out of this. But Carter wasn't so sure he could, or wanted to. As Ethan stepped outside with the stranger, Carter sank onto the bench, his mind a storm of questions. What had Ethan meant? Was this real, or was Carter reading too much into it? And who the hell was that guy? The locked door, Ethan's confession, the stranger's arrival. It all felt like the opening act of something much bigger, something that could either save Carter or break him completely. He didn't know it yet, but that night in the gym was the spark that would set his world ablaze. Carter sat frozen on the locker room bench, the echo of the closing door still ringing in his ears. His wrist tingled where Ethan had touched him, the memory of that fleeting contact burning brighter than the stranger's ominous arrival. He strained to hear the muffled voices outside, but the words were indistinct, swallowed by the hum of the gym's air conditioning. He replayed Ethan's confession in his mind. "You're in my head, Carter. Every damn day." It was too much, too sudden, like a wave crashing over him before he could brace himself. Carter had spent months building walls, convincing himself he was fine alone, that he didn't need anyone after his ex. Julian had torn his heart to shreds. Julian's voice still haunted him. "You're too needy, Carter. No one's going to put up with that." Yet here was Ethan, seeing through him, offering something Carter wasn't sure he could trust. The door swung open, and Ethan stepped back inside, alone. His face was a mask, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Sorry about that," he said, his tone clipped as he ran a hand through his hair. "Just gym business." Carter didn't buy it. The man in the suit hadn't looked like a gym member or a delivery guy. He'd carried an air of authority, like someone who could make problems disappear or create them. "Who was that?" Carter asked, standing, his voice sharper than he intended. Ethan hesitated, his gaze darting to the side before meeting Carter's. "Nobody you need to worry about," he said, but the dodge only fueled Carter's suspicion. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them, his heart pounding with a mix of frustration and something dangerously close to hope. "Don't do that," Carter said, his voice low but firm. You just said all that, and now you're shutting me out?" He gestured vaguely, his hands shaking. "What's going on, Ethan?" For a moment, Ethan looked like he might deflect again, but then his shoulders sagged, and he let out a heavy sigh. "His name's Victor," Ethan said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's someone from my past. Not a good part." Carter's stomach twisted. He wanted to press, to demand details, but the raw edge in Ethan's voice stopped him. Instead, he nodded, giving Ethan space to continue. "I got mixed up with some bad people a few years back," Ethan said, leaning against the lockers, his eyes distant. "Before I moved to Seattle, before this gym, Victor was part of that. I thought I'd left it behind, but," he trailed off, his jaw tightening. Carter's mind raced, piecing together fragments. Ethan, the confident coach with the easy smile, had a past that haunted him? It made him seem more human, more reachable, but it also raised a red flag. "What does he want?" Carter asked, his voice softer now. Ethan's eyes flicked to his, and for a moment, Carter saw something like gratitude there, like he was relieved Carter hadn't bolted. "He wants me to do something for him," Ethan said. "Something I swore I'd never do again." He didn't elaborate, and Carter didn't push. Not yet. Instead, Carter took a risk. He stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from Ethan's body. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "But if you're in trouble, I want to help." Ethan's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before it softened into something warmer, something that made Carter's heart ache. "You barely know me," Ethan said, but there was no bite in his words, only wonder. Carter shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe I want to." The air between them crackled, the tension from earlier returning, but softer now, laced with possibility. Ethan's gaze dropped to Carter's lips, and for a heartbeat, Carter thought he might close the distance, might make real what they'd only danced around. But then Ethan stepped back, breaking the spell. "You should go home," he said, his voice rough. "It's late." Carter wanted to argue, to stay, but the weight of Ethan's words, and the shadow of Victor hung heavy. He nodded, grabbing his bag, but as he reached the door, he turned back. "I meant it," Carter said. "I'm here." Ethan's smile was small, almost sad, but it was enough to keep Carter's hope alive as he stepped into the chilly Seattle night. Outside, the city buzzed faintly, the distant hum of traffic a stark contrast to the quiet intensity of the gym. Carter's mind was a tangle of emotions. Ethan's confession, Victor's intrusion, the way his own heart seemed to betray him every time Ethan was near. He didn't notice the sleek black car parked across the street, its tinted windows hiding the figure watching him walk away. Back at his apartment, Carter collapsed onto his couch, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed, a text from his coworker, Mia, asking how his gym session went. He typed a quick reply, avoiding the truth. How could he explain what had happened? Ethan's words, his touch, the unspoken promise of something more. It was all too raw, too fragile. But as he drifted toward sleep, one thought anchored him. Ethan was in trouble, and Carter wasn't about to let him face it alone. He didn't know what Victor wanted or what Ethan's past held, but he knew one thing for certain. He was in too deep to walk away now. Carter woke to the buzz of his phone, the screen glowing with a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the pier, 10 a.m. We need to talk about Ethan." His stomach churned as he read it again, the words cold and sharp. Victor. It had to be. He rolled out of bed, the Seattle skyline gray through his window. Last night's encounter with Ethan replayed in his mind. The locked door, the confession, the way Ethan's touch had lingered. Carter wasn't naive. He knew Victor's appearance wasn't a coincidence. Whatever Ethan was hiding, it was big, and Carter was already caught in its orbit. He arrived at Pike Place Market's pier just before 10, the salty breeze cutting through his jacket. The crowd was thin, tourists snapping photos of the water, vendors calling out over the squawk of gulls. Victor stood near the railing, his suit immaculate despite the casual setting. Up close, he was older than Carter had thought, mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to dissect everything they landed on. "You're Carter," Victor said, not a question. His voice was smooth, controlled, like he was used to being obeyed. Carter nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone sharper than he felt. Victor's lips twitched, almost a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ethan's in over his head," Victor said, leaning against the railing, his gaze fixed on the water. "He thinks he can outrun his past, but it's catching up. I'm here to make sure it doesn't swallow him whole." Carter's chest tightened. He wanted to demand answers, but Victor's calm authority made him feel like he was playing chess with a grandmaster. "What's that got to do with me?" Carter asked, though he already knew the answer. Victor turned, his eyes locking onto Carter's with an intensity that made him want to step back. "You're important to him," Victor said simply, "and that makes you a liability, or an asset. Your choice." Carter's mind raced. A liability? An asset? The words felt like pieces of a puzzle he didn't understand. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice wavered. Victor's smile widened, predatory now. "You will," he said. "Tell Ethan I'll be in touch. And Carter, don't do anything stupid." With that, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. Carter stood frozen, the weight of Victor's words pressing down on him. He pulled out his phone, hesitating before texting Ethan. "Just met Victor at the pier. What the hell's going on?" No reply came, and the silence gnawed at him as he headed to work. At the design firm, Carter tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting. Mia, his co-worker, noticed his distraction. "You okay, Carter?" she asked, leaning over his desk. He forced a smile, muttering something about a rough night. But the truth was, he was unraveling. Ethan's confession had cracked open something in him, a longing he'd buried since Julian. And now Victor's cryptic warning had turned that longing into something dangerous. That evening, Carter went back to the gym, half hoping Ethan would be there, half dreading it. The place was busier now, filled with the usual after-work crowd. Ethan was coaching a group class, his voice steady as he called out reps. But when he saw Carter, his expression flickered. Relief, worry, something unspoken. After the class, he pulled Carter aside, leading him to a quiet corner near the weight racks. "You met Victor," Ethan said, not a question. Carter nodded, crossing his arms. "He said you're in trouble, that I'm involved somehow." Ethan's face darkened, and he swore under his breath. I didn't want you dragged into this, he said, his voice low. I thought I could keep it separate. Keep what separate? Carter snapped, frustration spilling over. You can't just drop a bomb like last night, and then act like it's nothing. Ethan flinched, and Carter immediately regretted his tone. But he didn't back down. If you're in trouble, Ethan, let me in. I can handle it. Ethan's eyes searched his, and for a moment, Carter thought he'd open up. But then Ethan shook his head. You don't know what you're asking, he said, his voice heavy. This isn't your fight. The words stung, but Carter saw the fear in Ethan's eyes, the same fear he'd glimpsed last night. Whatever Victor was holding over him, it was bigger than either of them. Before Carter could argue, Ethan's hand brushed his arm, a fleeting touch that sent warmth flooding through him. Just give me time, Ethan said softly. I'll figure this out. Carter wanted to push, to demand more, but the vulnerability in Ethan's voice stopped him. He nodded, his throat tight, and watched as Ethan walked away, his shoulders tense. As Carter left the gym, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, but the street was empty, the black car from last night nowhere in sight. Still, the unease lingered, a warning that whatever was coming, he and Ethan were running out of time. Carter couldn't sleep. The memory of Ethan's touch, Victor's cryptic threats, and the growing sense that he was tangled in something far bigger than himself kept him tossing in bed. By 3 a.m., he gave up, pulling out his laptop to search for any clue about Victor or Ethan's past. He found nothing. No social media, no news articles, just a black hole where answers should have been. The next morning, Carter's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Meet me at the gym, 7 p.m. I'll explain everything. The words sent a jolt of hope and dread through him. He spent the day at work distracted, sketching logos that looked more like scribbles, his mind on Ethan. Mia noticed again, but this time, Carter confided a little, leaving out the details about Victor. Sounds like you're falling for this guy, she said with a grin. Carter didn't deny it, but the thought made his chest ache. Falling for Ethan meant trusting him, and trust was a luxury Carter wasn't sure he could afford. At 7 p.m., the gym was quiet again, the last members trickling out. Ethan was waiting by the treadmills, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy. He led Carter to his office, a small room cluttered with protein shake bottles and training logs. The door clicked shut, and Carter's heart raced, remembering the last time they'd been alone like this. I owe you the truth, Ethan said, sitting on the edge of his desk. His hands gripped the wood, knuckles white. But it's not pretty. Carter nodded, sitting across from him, bracing himself. Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes distant. 3 years ago, I was in L.A., working as a personal trainer. I got mixed up with a guy named Marcus, Victor's brother. He ran an underground fight club, illegal, high-stakes matches. I was young, broke, and stupid. I fought for him. Carter's stomach dropped. Ethan, the guy who radiated control, had been a fighter in some shady underworld? It was hard to picture, but the pain in Ethan's voice made it real. I was good, Ethan continued, his voice bitter. Too good. Marcus saw dollar signs, and I got in deeper than I meant to. Victor was his enforcer, made sure everyone played by their rules. When I tried to get out, they didn't take it well. What happened? Carter asked, his voice barely audible. Ethan's jaw tightened. I ran. Came to Seattle, started over. I thought I was free, but Victor found me. He wants me to fight again. One last match to settle an old debt. Carter's mind spun. A fight? That explained Victor's presence, his cryptic threats. But it didn't explain why Carter was involved. Why am I a liability? Carter asked, echoing Victor's words. Ethan's eyes softened, and he stood, crossing the small space between them. Because I care about you, he said, his voice raw. Victor knows it. He'll use anything, or anyone, to get what he wants. Carter's breath caught. Ethan was close now, his hand hovering near Carter's cheek, not quite touching. I didn't mean for this to happen, Ethan said. But I can't stop thinking about you. The air between them was electric, every nerve in Carter's body alive with the need to close the distance. He stood, his hand brushing Ethan's, a silent question. Ethan answered by stepping closer, his lips grazing Carter's in a kiss that was soft, tentative, then deepening with a hunger that took Carter's breath away. For a moment, the world outside, Victor, the fight, the past, disappeared. There was only Ethan, warm and solid and real. But the moment shattered when Carter's phone buzzed, a new message from the unknown number. Tell Ethan the fight's next week. Don't make me come for you. Carter pulled back, showing Ethan the text. Ethan's face hardened, and he swore under his breath. I'll handle it, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Carter grabbed his hand, holding tight. We'll handle it, he said, his voice firm. I'm not letting you do this alone. Ethan's eyes searched his, a mix of fear and gratitude. You don't know what you're signing up for, he said, but Carter shook his head. I know enough, Carter said, and I'm not going anywhere. Ethan pulled him close, their foreheads touching, and for the first time, Carter felt like they were in this together. But as they stood there, the weight of Victor's message loomed, a reminder that the past wasn't done with them yet. The next few days were a blur of tension and stolen moments. Carter and Ethan met in secret, their conversations a mix of planning and confessions. Each touch, each glance, deepened the bond between them, but Victor's shadow hung over every moment. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that every step they took was a step closer to a reckoning. Ethan explained more about the fight. It was a one-off, a high-stakes match in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seattle. The payout was enough to clear Ethan's debt to Marcus, but the risk was steep, injury, or worse. Carter hated the idea, but Ethan was resolute. It's the only way out, he said one night as they sat in Carter's apartment, the city lights flickering through the window. If I don't do this, Victor will never stop. Carter wanted to argue, to find another way, but the determination in Ethan's eyes stopped him. Instead, he pulled Ethan close, their lips meeting in a kiss that was equal parts desperation and defiance. Then we do it together, Carter said, his voice steady. Ethan nodded, his hand cupping Carter's face, and for a moment, they let themselves believe they could win. But the closer the fight got, the more Carter noticed changes in Ethan. He was jumpy, checking his phone constantly, his smiles forced. Carter pushed him to open up, and one night, Ethan admitted the truth. Victor had threatened to expose Carter's involvement to Marcus if Ethan didn't comply. He knows where you work, where you live, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I can't let him hurt you. Carter's blood ran cold, but he refused to back down. He's trying to scare us, he said, gripping Ethan's hand. We're stronger than that. Ethan's smile was faint, but he nodded, pulling Carter into a tight embrace. They spent the night talking, planning, clinging to each other like a lifeline. The day of the fight arrived, a cold, drizzly Saturday. Carter drove Ethan to the warehouse, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The building was a hulking, rusted shell, its windows boarded up, the air thick with the smell of oil and decay. Inside, a crowd of rough-looking men and women gathered around a makeshift ring, their shouts echoing off the concrete walls. Victor was there, his suit out of place among the leather jackets and tattoos, his eyes locking onto Carter with a chilling smile. Ethan squeezed Carter's hand before stepping into the ring. His opponent was a brute of a man, all muscle and scars, with a sneer that promised pain. Carter's heart pounded as the fight began, each blow landing like a hammer in his chest. Ethan was fast, skilled, but the other guy was relentless, his fists a blur. Blood speckled the mat, and Carter's stomach churned as Ethan took a hit to the jaw, staggering but staying upright. Stay with me, Carter whispered under his breath, his hands clenched. He wanted to scream, to stop the fight, but he knew this was Ethan's battle. All he could do was stand there, a silent anchor, as Ethan fought for their future. The round ended, and Ethan stumbled to the corner, his face bruised but his eyes fierce. Carter pushed through the crowd, ignoring Victor's watchful gaze, and knelt beside him. You've got this, Carter said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. Ethan managed a weak smile, his hand finding Carter's. For you, he said, and Carter's heart swelled, even as the bell rang for the next round. As Ethan stepped back into the ring, Carter's eyes caught Victor's across the warehouse. The man's smile was gone, replaced by something darker, something that told Carter this wasn't just about the fight. Whatever happened tonight, they weren't out of the woods yet. The final round was brutal. Ethan's movements were slower now, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. Carter stood at the edge of the ring, his heart in his throat, every punch feeling like it landed on him. The crowd roared, a chaotic blur of noise, but Carter's world narrowed to Ethan. The way his eyes flickered with determination, the way he dodged a blow and landed one of his own. When the final bell rang, Ethan was still standing, bloodied but victorious. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others cursing as bets were settled. Carter pushed through to Ethan, who collapsed against him, his breath ragged. "It's over," Ethan whispered, and Carter held him tight, relief flooding through him. But as they turned to leave, Victor stepped into their path, his expression unreadable. "You did good, Ethan," Victor said, his voice smooth but laced with menace. "Debt's paid. But don't think this is the end." He glanced at Carter, his eyes cold. "You're both on my radar now." Before Carter could respond, Victor melted into the crowd, leaving a chill in his wake. Back at Carter's apartment, they cleaned Ethan's wounds in silence, the weight of the night settling over them. Ethan winced as Carter dabbed antiseptic on a cut above his eye, but his hand found Carter's, holding tight. "I didn't think I'd make it through tonight," Ethan admitted, his voice raw. "Not without you." Carter's chest ached with the weight of those words. He leaned in, kissing Ethan softly, pouring everything, fear, hope, love, into that moment. "We're in this together," he said, his voice steady. "No matter what Victor throws at us." In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically fix itself. Victor's shadow lingered, a reminder that the past was never truly gone. But Carter and Ethan faced it as a team. They talked openly now, about their fears, their dreams, the scars they both carried. Carter found strength in Ethan's vulnerability, and Ethan found solace in Carter's unwavering support. One evening, as they walked along the Seattle waterfront, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ethan stopped, pulling Carter close. "I don't know what's coming," he said, his voice soft but sure. "But with you, I'm not afraid." Carter smiled, his heart full, and kissed him under the fading light, the world around them fading away. They'd been through hell, but they'd come out stronger, together. Victor might still be out there, but Carter and Ethan had something he could never touch, a love that had been forged in fire, unbreakable and true. And as they stood there, hand in hand, Carter knew that whatever came next, they'd face it side by side, ready to fight for their future.